baby. Holy cow, what a toe, Kim.
I see him.
Woo! What up, outdoors, baby? He's every bit of 6 foot. Probably 175. I like to keep that head pointed away. Pointed down. Away. Just an absolute behemoth of a shark. I mean, just a behemoth of a shark. Look at that. Golly. So the purpose of this video is I've been asked by followers, how do I harvest and then take care of a shark while it's on the waters, get it prepped, and then get it home and get it processed and packaged. Now, this is what I do. I do not recommend anybody do this, ever, ever. This is dangerous. You're on your jet ski, you're in a boat, whatever you're on. If you get bit by a shark when you're out there, the chances of you driving yourself to shore if you're on a jet ski and getting to a hospital, they're just not good. So I'm just telling you what I do. I don't recommend anybody do any of this or follow this. This is just me giving you information on how I go about doing this. Okay, with that out of the way, this is what I do. So I get a big shark on. You saw previously how I go about making sure the shark stays calm and he's disorientated. And I'm now in a position to get this shark to shore. Now, you need to check your regulations. If you are in state waters, which is usually 9 miles to the shoreline, federal waters are usually 9 miles and out, okay? So let's say, for this example, right now you're in state waters. You cannot dispatch a shark by shooting it in state waters. You have to dispatch of it in the water, which I definitely don't recommend. I would never do. Instead, what I do is what you saw in the video is I tow it to shore. This is what you call walking the dog. We're walking our shark. Take him into the beach. Like the sound Joe. We're going to take him into the shallows. We're going to drown him. Woo! What up, outdoors, baby? I'll tell you what. I might have to do my bicep workout today. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, why don't I just tie a rope around its tail, tie it to the ski, and drag it in instead of using the pole? For me, I don't want that shark permanently attached to my ski in any fashion for any reason whatsoever. Even right now, while he's very much alive, I haven't done anything to him. To try and get a tail wrap around him is really, 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 really sketchy. I wouldn't even consider it. I have to remember, I'm in a jet ski. I'm not in a boat. I'm not 2-3 feet above the water line where I've got my buddy handling the head and I'm over here doing the tail. I'm by myself and I am inches out of the water. Inches. There is no way, with that shark being inches away, that I'm going to try to wrap that tail. Not on a jet ski, ever. Then if I were to tail wrap him and I start dragging him in, now that shark's permanently attached to my ski. At any moment, if you think about it, if he's attached to the back of my ski, if he comes around, that's going to put his head right there at my footwells, right there at my leg. Guys, when I tow in a shark, sometimes he'll tow, but then there's going to be a part where he all of a sudden gets a burst of energy and he starts running out drag. I've got to stop my ski. I've got to let him run. I've got to reel him back in. I've got to start the whole process all over again. I don't want him permanently attached. If he becomes upset, I want to be able to hit my drag and let him go away from me. That is, in my opinion, what keeps me safe in a lot of this process, which is completely unsafe. And even when he's gutted and I've got him and I've harvested him out in federal waters and he's dead, I don't want anything affecting my steering, my drive, my drag, going through an inlet with a shark back there. Plus, if I'm dragging a shark back here in the water, I'm basically trolling. And I don't want, who knows what, a whale, another shark, to hit that and have him permanently attached to my jet ski
and then me not have control of my ski. So it seems like a good option to maybe tie it off to make this part of the process easier. But in my mind, for me, I'm thinking as much as I can, try to make this as safe as possible. And if that shark is on my rod and reel and that shark decides to do something, or another animal in the ocean that decides to do something to my shark, then I can hit my drag and I can get that away from my ski. So I use my trolling motor and I get in about 3 feet of water and I spot lock. Now at this point, I've towed my shark in and he's probably pet back up because he has water that's run across his gills for a long time, several miles possibly. And I have to be aware of that. So what I do is once I get spot locked, I start to loosen my drag and I try to encourage that shark to start to swim away. I'll let the shark get 20, 30 yards away from me because now I have to get off into the water and I don't want that shark anywhere near me. So once he's well away from me, I get my knife and I get a rope, and then of course I have my pole, and I go to the beach. I put all my gear up there way up in the sand, and then I tie my drag and I reel the shark back in on shore. Now, it is very hectic when a shark hits land. It is not natural and they don't like it and they're going to flop all over the place. So what I do is I keep my line well away from getting tangled up into the shark. Once I get him on land, what I do is I take my pole and I loosen my drag and I take my pole way up the beach, probably 40, 50, 60 feet away. And I'll take it, say, to the left. Then I take a rope and I tie it around the shark's tail and I drag him the opposite direction so that my line and my shark stay separated. When I go to tie the rope to the shark's tail, he is not going to like that. And I have to make sure and keep my legs away from the tail so I don't get slapped. He can turn on himself. I have to keep well away from his head so I don't get bit. So once I tie his tail, I'll pull him way up shore, probably 20 feet out of the water. At that point, I go ahead, I take the rope back off the tail, and my pole stays attached the whole time. I never take the hook out. Now, at this point, what I have to do is I have to bleed the shark. So I have to very carefully approach from the back and make sure I stay away from the mouth, get my hand on his back and steady myself, and then I take my knife and I start at the back gill and I cut as deep as I can all the way to the front gill multiple times, just completely separating that gill and bleeding him out. And then I do the same thing to the other side. I have to be careful when I do this because this shark's head is flopping all over the place. And again, you don't want to get shark bit, and I don't want to get cut by my own knife, which would be very, very easy to do. These are violent, it's a violent situation. And doing this by yourself makes it really, really difficult. So once I've cut his gills, I get away from the shark and I catch my breath because I'm wore out. And I just sit on the beach and I rest for 10 minutes, let him completely bleed out. Now, even though he's bleeding out like this, he by all means is not dead. He is still extremely dangerous. So the next thing I do is I want to immobilize my shark. So I go right behind his head where I start running into a lot of that meat, and I cut. You have to saw because that hide is so tough. You have to saw through the hide. And again, be careful. I have to be careful that I don't cut myself during this process. I cut all the way down through the meat, and then I'm going to sever his spinal column. Once I've severed that spinal column, you'll see it's white. You'll see it's kind of a liquid in the middle where his spinal cord and stuff is.
There's no bones. You just have this spinal cord. So there's no ribs, anything like that. You just got this cartilage center right here.
And that will completely immobilize the back half of the shark. The head is just like a snake. Guys, you can cut a head off a snake, and that snake will still bite you a day later. And the shark is no different. So I don't get anything in, around, or near the head. Now that shark's been immobilized, or this is the second thing that I do. I turn my shark over, because now he won't be flopping all over the place. And I take my knife, being careful that I don't cut myself, and I go in through his booty hole, and I cut him all the way up past his gills, just as far as I can, all the way up into here. And then I get all of his entrails out, liver, everything you can get out, because sharks don't have a bladder, and as soon as they die, their urine will start to leak back in through their vascular system. Even though they're dead, it'll still leach back into the meat. It'll taint your meat, and your meat won't be any good. So I get the guts out as soon as I can. So now that I've got my shark gutted and bled out, I have to get it onto my ski. To do that, I put 2 slices under his chin with about 1.5 inches of hide, and then I run a rope, or in my case, I've got my orange cord with a carabiner. I run my carabiner through that. Then I go out, I get on my ski, and I pull him head first onto my ski. If I try to pull it in reverse, say I want to tie his tail and pull his tail up, the hide won't slide. It'll stand up, and it's real hard to get onto your ski, and the fins are bending the wrong direction. So I always go head first. Now I have to be careful, because if I pull this up and this head comes and it hits me in the leg or hits something, and the shark, you can still get bit. So I have to be aware of that the whole time. So I get his head up on, and then I just slide his head toward the rear of the ski, and then you'll see in the video that continues here how I tie him down. I take a rope and I go around his head and one of his pectoral fins, and that keeps my shark from sliding all the way off the back of my ski. And then I take a second rope and I tie it around his tail, and then I tie that to the handles on the rear seat. A shark skin is very abrasive, and that shark skin will rub the vinyl on your seat and will actually scuff the vinyl on your seat. So for me, I could care less. You know, my ski is a tool, and I'm not worried about it. Now, if I was worried about it, then I would lay down a towel or lay down something there to keep that from happening. But for me, it's not a big deal.
All right, guys, we got him loaded up. Heading back in to start doing some work. Y'all keep watching One Off Outdoors. Only on One Off Outdoors you're going to see a jet ski fisherman hauling in a shark. I do not recommend this. Y'all have a blessed day. Woo! Let's go home.
This is what I do if I'm in federal waters. If I'm at the 9-mile mark or further out, there you're allowed to, you need to check your state regulations because it's different in every state. The states I go to, you are allowed to take a gun and shoot to dispatch your shark. Guys, this whole thing is very dangerous, and I don't recommend this for anybody. This is just what I do. By shooting the shark while you're out on the water, that keeps me from having to leave him on my pole and drag him all the way into shore for 10, 15, 20, 30 miles, which is just a no-go. So I have a firearm. Now, this is a picture of your shark. This is the nose, these are his eyes, and then this is his brain. Right back here, almost even with the back of the eye socket right here, you have the cerebellum. This is the part of the brain that controls the nervous system. So what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to shoot that nervous system part of the brain. Hopefully, if I do this correctly, this will immobilize my shark and allow me to gut it and gill it while I'm out there on the water. This also leaves the part of the brain still active that controls the circulatory system so you can get the blood out. So this is important. I have shot this and hit it right on the money, and I've had to shoot several times before I hit the right spot. This is, again, very dangerous. When I shoot a shark, you have no control over how that shark's going to react. You may hit him and he may just whirl in the water. I may shoot him and he may just go flying all over the place. This whole situation is very, very dangerous. So I shoot my shark and he's immobilized. Now what do I do? Now what I have to do is I have to take a gaff. I'm going to poke him with the pointed end of the gaff on his skin to see how he reacts. And if I'm not getting much reaction, that means I've done a good job with my shot placement. Now, what I do is I take the gaff and I run it under the first gill gently and slowly, and I lift the shark up out of the water so I can take my knife and I cut away from myself. I don't ever cut toward myself. I always cut away from myself. That way, if I slip, my knife goes always away. That's just knife rules 101. And I gill one side, and then I move my gaff over, and then I gill the other side. I'm mindful the whole time that as I start to cut this gill, this shark could immediately jump into my ski, and I could get bitten. So I have to be mindful of where that head is, how it's kind of angled and pointed away from me as I gill. And then I'm also mindful that my gaff is going to be used to push that shark if he tries to come back into the ski with me. I'm also mindful that I could easily lose my gaff at any point during this process. Now, let's say I have successfully gilled both sides. I'm going to let him bleed out for probably 10 minutes. I'm also mindful at this point that other sharks could come in, and one of the sharks' favorite things on their food list is other sharks. So I have to be mindful of that. At this point, if my shark is, calmed down and immobilized, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sever the spine on my shark, just like you saw earlier in the video that I did when I have a shark on land. This is very dangerous. Like every step in this whole process is dangerous. With the gaff in his gills, I'm going to just barely get his head over my gunnel on my footwell. And at that point, I'm going to place my hand on the top of his head, and his nose is going to go down into my gunnel. Now, my feet are not on that side of the gunnel. My feet are on the other side of the gunnel during this whole process. Okay? If he throws his head and I've got my leg down there, then I got bit. So, my feet are on the other side. I'm going to push that head down. And again, he's still attached to my pole with the hook. I'm going to take that gaff out, and I'm going to set that gaff to the side, and then I'm going to get my knife, and my knife needs to be laying down in my footwell, I keep it over there to the right. And then, just like you saw earlier in the video, right behind the head where the meat starts, I'm going to start to cut through that. Also understanding that as soon as I start to cut through that, that shark can start to flop, and I've got to turn that shark loose, and I've got to start the whole process all over again. I'm not going to fight that shark and try to keep him in there. If he wants out, he's gone. And then I'll just start the process all over again. So I've got his head pushed down, and so his head is really arcing. I'm going to cut through that, and then I'm going to cut that spinal cord. Once I've done that, then the body is immobilized. And then just like you saw earlier in the video, I can go, and I still have to be mindful of the head because I can still get bit. I'm going to cut 2 slices under his chin. I'm going to run my rope or my carabiner, clip through that, and then with my feet on the other side of the footwell, I'm going to pull him onto the ski, have his nose go on top of my ice chest. Now, once I have him up on my ski, I have to gut him. Now, there's 2 different ways that I can go about doing this. It's easier and safer for me to gut the shark while it's on my ski. I've got him up on my ice chest. I have to tuck one of his pectoral fins under him to get him to turn over. Now I basically use my whole ski like a table. And just like you saw earlier in the video, I go in through his booty hole and I cut him all the way up to his chin, all the way up in here past his gills. And then I get everything out. There won't be any blood here. If you rupture the stomach or anything else, then you get goo everywhere. And it's a pretty nasty process, but it's not too bad, all things considered. Now, I take those guts and I put them into my footwell. Okay, now this is important. I still have to tie down my shark and all of that. I still have other things to do. And what I don't want to do is to just dump them out in the water. Because as I'm drifting and I'm taking care of this whole shark, the guts are going to drift with me. And if they're drifting with me and they're up against my ski and I forget about them, and then I've got my shark hole tied down, I'm ready to go back to the dock, if those guts are right there, they're going to get sucked into my impeller. And if that happens, you're done for the day, and you're calling sea tow. So what I do is I leave the guts in my footwell. I get everything else taken care of. Get my shark tied down, get all my gear all set up, and I'm getting ready to head back to the dock. What I'll do is I'll put my ski in forward motion, and so I'm moving forward, and then I'll reach down while I'm moving and get those guts and throw them well away from my ski, well out to the side. And then that way it's, I get away from my guts. I'll go quite a ways away from my guts, stop my ski, get my hands washed off, maybe get a little water in my footwells to get all the blood out. And then when I jet off, that'll rinse my footwell out, and then I'm good. Now, I have a choice of gutting my shark while it's on the ski, but I could also gut it while it's in the water. I don't do it while it's in the water for several reasons. The first reason is to try to get your shark tail first in, and then gutting toward the head while it's on the side of my ski is just not safe. It's too easy to fill up that footwell. It's too easy to turn it over. The shark's too heavy. Also, during this whole process, the likelihood of me bringing other sharks in with all of that blood and everything is pretty high. And the last thing I want is to have myself on the edge of my ski doing this and have another shark come swimming in and hit my shark going 20 miles an hour. So I want him out of the water, up on my ski, so he's easier to manage. Yes, it's messier, but it's not really all that bad. Now, as if this whole situation wasn't bad enough, I had to be mindful of my jet ski getting turned over during this whole process. I have that shark, which could be 100 to 200, 300, 400 pounds on one side of my ski. That's going to cause my ski to tilt. My footwells can fill up with water. I can wind up rolling my ski over. So I have to be mindful of all of that. So before I pull my shark in, I go ahead and I bail out both footwells, get them completely empty, completely dry, and then I'll hoist the shark onto my ski and get him tied down. This is something that I always have to be mindful of. If I am loading a shark onto my ski to take it home, that's going to put a tremendous amount of weight right back on the rear of my ski. So if I'm 1 mile away from the dock or I'm 20 miles away from the dock, your ski is going to hop the whole time. Anytime you have too much weight on the back of your skis, some of you may have noticed this when your live well's completely filled and you've got gas containers, you just get this hopping. So whenever I get a shark loaded up, like a bunny rabbit, I hop all the way home. It's very annoying. I try to do my best to plane out. I trim my motor all the way down and to where I've got as much nose down as I possibly can. I even stand up and usually the whole way home, and kind of I'm over my handlebars. That also helps. Okay, in this next part of the video, you're going to see me process the shark. Now, what you're not going to see in the video is when I got home, I went ahead and cut the head and all the fins off to where I've just got the big body of the shark. And then I'm going to explain how I cut that up. Now, this is important. When you're on the water, you cannot dismember any part of your shark. Some of you may be thinking, well, if I'm out there, if I just cut the head and fins off, then I can put the body and I can just put it in my cooler and just haul it home in my cooler. You need to check your state regulations, but almost every state out there, you have to take the shark home completely whole. That's why all of this process in this video is happening. It would be nice if you could just cut that midsection out that you're going to wind up actually eating and throw the rest out in the water, but you can't do that, okay? All right, let's get to the processing. What I do is I take the body and I cut that into sections. And typically each section is as long as the blade on my knife. So if I have a 7-inch blade or a 9-inch blade, that's how big that section is. Now, cutting through the hide on the shark, guys, it's just going to dull your knife to pieces. You have to have a knife sharpener. This is the kind where you just quickly drag it across the blade. It's real hard on your blade, but it peels it off and it makes it sharp very, very quick. And you're going to have to do this repeatedly, okay? And don't try to do it just with a dull knife. It's not going to happen. So once you cut through the hide, again, they don't have any bones, so you've got this spinal column and the spinal cord, and it's kind of hard to find those little joints. So what I do is I cut through the hide all the way down to that, and I cut all the way around it. And then I open that up, and then I take a machete, and I use the weight of the machete to just basically cut and break through that. Then once it opens up, then you can take a knife and you can split it, and that whole section will just lift right out. And typically you'll get, out of a big shark like this, you'll get 6 or 7 sections. The tail, way back, I don't keep anything that's, say, 3 or 4 inches in diameter or smaller. I just get rid of that because there's so much red, and I usually just do that everything forward. So that's what you'll see here. All right.
All right, guys, welcome to One Off Outdoors. So today I'm going to show you how to process your shark. So this is a piece that we're getting ready to peel out, and basically it's like a jelly roll. You're taking the hide off, and if you look, you can see that red line, just like on every fish, and you're just peeling that off. So again, you'll just start here, and you don't want to cut into the hide. You want to just stay just right along that edge, just like that. Just like you're peeling out a jelly roll. Now, as you get into the belly meat, you'll start to see a red line in there. And again, you just take that belly meat out, and then take that red line out. And then there's your meat. Got the shark processed using our Insta-Seal. Worked out really good. Put everything in probably 1.5 to 2 pound bags, and got some of our red drum in here, and then all of our shark. Of course, no bones, just all meat.